we spoke to one of the guys who was directing people to the food counter, and I asked him, did he understand where the word came from, and he thought it was south of Manhattan, he said. Which I kind of hope, I think Dublin is kind of south of Manhattan in a certain sense. But actually, the word actually comes from Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. It's the name of the drug of choice in society, the dystopian society, which Huxley predicted and which we now live in. Probably more accurate than Orwell, more accurately predicted the future, a society in which, in a sense, pampering and pandering have reduced population to docility and prevented them from seeing that they're actually being totalitarianized while they sleep and even while they wake, and so there will be no difference. I had a very nice experience yesterday, which brought me back to one of the things I used to say to men, thousands of men maybe in this, because when I was writing about this, I used to be a journalist, I'm not a journalist anymore. I told my wife, Rita, that when I die, and if by chance the word journalist appears in any of my obituaries, she should immediately ring up and ask for clarification and correction, because I do not want anything to do with this so-called profession of journalist, because it is utterly, irredeemably corrupt in this country and perhaps elsewhere. But I had a nice experience yesterday. I was out on the SOS Man Down campaign with Fathers for Justice. It was a very moving moment, and we went around setting in different locations. And I was at Stephen Green. Interestingly, actually, women came up really openly and very supportively of what we were doing. Men seemed to pull back, and that's almost like, again, emblematic of the problem we've been facing. That the very people we're talking about, the very people who are in pain, don't want to talk about it. Not because they can't talk, but because they're terrified of what will happen to them. And I can vouch for that. I can tell that they're not wrong about that. They're not wrong. But afterwards, I sent a WhatsApp to my beautiful daughter Roshi, who's in Paris studying, and she's studying one now. And people think that my only interest in this has been to do with Roshi. I want to come back to that because it's not the case. But Roshi is not 21, she's going to university in Paris. She's married, she has a husband. So my job is done. And I always say to men, in the deepest depths of your pain, there's one question you need to ask yourself as you go on. Because I can't tell you that there's a law. I can't tell you how to find the law. I can't tell you how to find justice. I can only tell you how to find serenity today. And this is the way you do it. Just imagine the moment, judging everything you have done in relation to your duty as a father. Imagine when your child is 21 years of age, and you're sitting in a room, and you're looking her straight in the eye, and she asks you, Dad, what did you do about all this? Will you be able to answer truthfully and clearly and bravely? This is what I did, and this is what I did. This is how I faced down the corruption and injustice of my society.
You need to speak closer to the mic when your voice goes quiet, John.
So, this moment, which I predicted, came from me yesterday, in a certain sense, across the sea. Because I sent a WhatsApp of myself standing beside Barry outside the Stephen Green's. Barry was our male model, very handsome guy, naked, semi-naked, outside Stephen Green's shopping centre. I sent Roisin a picture of me standing beside him and told her it was a brief about what it was. I got a one-word answer. Cool. Vindication, my friends. Vindication for all of that pain, all of that abuse, all of the sneers and the smears and the demonizing. One word. Cool. It's the word that came to my mind when I first saw Matt O'Connor. I said, there's a rock and roller. Like me. We're rock and rollers. This is the thing, This corruption of our society drives us into stereotypes which they didn't label us with. Because we are right-wing. We are male supremacists. Pleading to be with our children. We are male supremacists. Pleading to be with our flesh and blood. We are male supremacists. I want to just go through my little experience. I don't want to bore you with all that because it's history. And maybe I'll write it up one day if I have enough days. It's a mistake, it's a fallacy to think that I started to write about this because of Roisin, because Roisin didn't exist when I started to write about it. I wrote a play called Long Black Coat in 1993, which went on stage in Kilkenny in 1994. I was in Dublin the same year. And that play was centred in a kind of a Huxleyan, apocalyptic situation. And it was a conversation mainly between two men, an old man, a grandfather, a young man, a father. And there was a third male who was missing, and that was the son or grandson. And the conversation related to the idea that both men were blaming each other because they couldn't understand why their flesh and blood could not be with them. And the play is all about that. Why the old man blames the young guy for being weak. The young guy blames the old guy for being a tyrant. Because that's a caricature. The worst thing about him as a tyrant was like my father. He was kind of based on my father. And the worst thing about him was that he had about 12 clocks in the room, in the house. And none of them gave the right time. And they all gave different times. So you had to actually know how to read each clock to know what time it was. And how they're interrelated. That was the extent of my father's tyranny, his patriarchal tyranny, and the extent of this man, the old man in the play. But I went on then to have a child myself. It's amazing, you know, I often think it's a great tribute to the incompetence of journalists that when they were fumbling around for any kind of dirt to find on me, any kind of a little snippet, anything that could make a joke, make an attack. There was copies of my play lying in every bookshop in Dublin. Because nobody was buying them, to be honest with you. So they were there. And it was all there as prophecy. The only difference was in the play it was a boy, Jody. And in real life it was a girl, Roisin. 2 years before she arrived. That was my first embarkation into this area. And then, only then, when she was born, did I start to think about this journalistically. And I wrote about it many times, perhaps. I don't know, many times. Not as many times as people say, for sure. Because I remember being dragged into the editor's office one day by the late Sean Flynn, was a very decent guy, but he was acting under orders, who threw my file from the library down and says, "You're writing about the same thing every week." And I said, "Oh. So, what am I writing about?" "Oh, you know what you're writing about." "Well, okay. Can we have a look and see what the problem is?" So, I said, "Let's go back 3 months." "No, I don't want to deal with all that." So let's go back 3 months. There are 2 columns, I think, in that 3 months about the issue of fatherhood. The rest, the other, whatever it would be, 25, were all about other things. But the perception had been already put out there. This guy's obsessed with this. He's vindictively, vexatiously pursuing this issue for personal reasons. Not because it's true. Not because it's real. So I went on there, and that was the keynote for all my time in the Irish Times. Deep fundamental hostility from all my colleagues, from the editorship of the paper, throughout. Lawyers, tapping my ankles every time I wrote something. I spent hours on the phone speaking to the editors about every sentence. The meaning stripped many times out of what I wrote. I often asked, is it appropriate, since I'm criticizing lawyers in a lot of these pieces, is it appropriate that a lawyer gets to decide whether it's a period or not? Conflict of interest. In another area you would see it. In this area nobody could see anything except what suited. So, in the beginning, I was convinced that this was, as David, that word he used, David, neglect, oversight. Because, you know, as I said, I'd been a rock and roller. I came from, we came from the blues. The blues started with the cries of the slaves chanting to one another across the plantations about their pain, about their grief, and the chants became songs, which became the blues. And that's where rock and roll comes from. And that's why I love it. And rock and roll used to actually, back in the beginning, the 50s, 60s, used to espouse genuine causes of justice. It has ceased to do so. It now only espouses fashionable causes, and there is a difference. Because if you want to be a rock and roller, this is the place to be now. Because this is the place where the most fundamental breaches of civil rights occur in our society and in other societies in the United Kingdom and in America. An amazing new book has come out by Stephen Baskerville, The New Sex War. Incredible. Describes in absolute graphic detail how basically the law is being dismantled so as to criminalize men on pseudo-crimes, domestic violence, perversion of the concept of rape, harassment, all these crimes, where there's no due process anymore, there's no evidence, there's no presumption of innocence, there are no rules of evidence. The allegation is the charge, is the conviction, is the sentence. Guilty as charged. That's coming here very soon. Well, it's here already in lots of ways, but it's coming to becoming a total globalizing force unless we stand up against it now. Read it, The New Sex War, Stephen Baskerville. So, I won't bore you with the details of all that stuff that happened. But I want to talk to you about the fact that I was thinking at the beginning, this is an oversight, because we believe in justice, don't we? All we left-wingers. I used to be a left-winger, and I saw what it meant. All this liberalism, we saw what it meant. And then I was thinking, this is terrible what's happening. I know what I do. I know a sure thing is going to work. I just run back, literally if you like, I run back to all my compadres, my comrades, in those left-wing magazines, papers, and say, come quickly, wait till you see what's happening over here. This is the kind of stuff that we really want to go after, isn't it? So they came, somewhat interested in what I found, and they looked, and then they kicked my head in. And they've been kicking my head in ever since.
Want the mic actually at your mouth?
That's just the way I'm speaking, Andy, I'm a very sensitive guy.
Good shot, John.
So then I kind of thought, this is an oversight. But I still didn't know what it was. And it took me a long time, I've got to say. I'm thick, gents. Couldn't see it. I knew there was something about the law not really being the law. And at the beginning, when I started, all through these, and to this day, all through those years, and to this day, I respond to every man who contacts me. And every month, maybe a dozen men will contact me, new cases. And I always go and meet them and have coffee with them. And in the beginning, when I met those guys, I used to say, I was studying the law, studying the Constitution, I was advising, I was kind of like a hobby lawyer. And then I realized there's no law. These guys are this is happening behind closed doors, where the law is the judge. And the judge doesn't even know what his role is. He doesn't know what the law is. He doesn't care, because he's little Hitler sitting on his bench. That's a very strong ethic. And once you see in the family court, you actually see the quality of your justice when you go to a family court, because you see then that the judge shouts at people. A man in a box, in a witness box. I've seen it many times. Going in as a Mackenzie friend. Shut up! Not loud enough. Shut up! I don't want to hear you! I've heard that dozens of times said to men. Judge tell them, I don't want to hear your evidence. I've already decided. There's a principle. You know that moment when the judge, you're in a courtroom, this is fundamental. This is a republic. Republic means this people are sovereign. This is our country. So in that moment, we have British standards. Britain isn't different. Britain isn't a republic. Queen is sovereign. And that means that an English judge, when he walks on, has a different demeanour to what the Irish judge should have. But the problem is that the Irish judges imitate the English judges. So in that moment when the judge walks on, when the tipstaff comes out, all rise, and the judge walks out, and everybody goes wrong way around. The judge should go, and the people should stand as they are. This is republic. This is sovereignty. We've lost that. We never had it actually because we never understood what it was. We didn't lose it. So, as I went on, I started to write about this. And I would get this backlash and people would warn me off and people would tell me very meaningfully from the newspaper I was working for in the Irish Times, my colleagues, speaking to you as a friend. Speaking to you as a friend, I'm concerned about you. I'm concerned you might be getting yourself into trouble. I was in there the other day and I heard people talking, saying, that guy, he's pushing it. We won't be able to protect him much longer. He's going to make himself unemployable. A very senior journalist came to me, I won't name him today, came to me and told me that. Subsequently, he told me he had been sent by the editor to tell me exactly that. This is free press. We don't have a free press. The press is supposed to be the fourth pillar of democracy, and it has resigned from that position. It is not prepared to represent all the people equally. Therefore, it is not fit for purpose. So I went on and I started trying to figure all this out, and I was telling men. So I was talking to men, and then I would say, it's not about law. So I'd say, okay, tactics. How do you handle yourself? Don't get angry. Don't get angry. If you're not going to be angry when your children are stolen, when the fuck are you going to be angry? Don't be angry. So I said, yeah, okay, wear a tie. Show respect for the scumbag behind on the bench. Don't bring a gun. Not today anyway. But then I knew that was kind of the wrong road also. And then in the end,
It's the label, isn't it?
Sorry, Alex, we seem to have that. So, I came then finally to what I say to men still to this day. What I say is, don't die. Don't let them kill you, because that's what they want. Stay alive, stay strong, look after yourself. Be brave, do the right thing, do the next right thing, do the next right thing. And one day you will get to that day when you look your daughter or your son in the eye and you'll say, he or she will say to you, what did you do in the war, Dad? And you'll be able to tell her straight up. That's what I did. And she will say, go. This is rock and roll. Rock and roll isn't about being on the right side of everything, on the right side of history. Rock and roll is about being on the wrong side and fighting to the finish, to the winning post. And that's why they call it the winning post, because the truth always has a future. You cannot kill the human spirit by oppression. This is the history of humanity. So I began to see gradually patterns. And then I saw what was really going on. And it was quite astonishing to me, because I kind of thought this was all a bit random. And then I saw that there's a pattern here. And the people who are shouting me all down, they're all professionals. They're not amateurs. They're all paid by the state. There's no such thing as an amateur feminist in Ireland. They're all paid for by me and you. This is about power. It's about changing the nature of family. Because why? Because the family remained the one repository of power which was independent of the state, which could only be encroached upon when there was a clear prima facie evidence of criminality, or neglect, or abuse, or inability to function as a parent. Only then could the state cross your threshold. Now they can cross your threshold thanks to the Children Amendment of 2012. They can cross your threshold if a social worker believes that at some point in the future You may be inclined to neglect your children. It's entirely subject to subjective. I've seen women who have suffered from this already because they'd had a relationship in the past which was violent. The social workers say they're no longer safe to parent their children. They take the children to care. So I began to see there's something here. These people are moving on the way we see things. They're moving on our Constitution. They're moving on Article 42 in 2012, and in 2015 they moved on Article 41. And they basically, in that, blew up the protections, limited as they were, because they were purely to do with the normative nuclear family, and I was never part of that. But I respect it, because I never said to anybody, I want you to make single fatherhood the centre of this society's definition of family. I don't want to be there. I didn't think, because it's not a fun place to be. I wouldn't wish it on any man to have to go through this. But we wanted to be given fairness and justice, and that wasn't forthcoming. But then they turned it upside down for a global lobby with vast funding and huge capacity to propagandize their message. And now we have a constitution which is meaningless in terms of definitions of family, parenting, and marriage. Meaningless. There's no protection for any biological link whatsoever in the constitution now, marriage or otherwise. It doesn't matter. That's the net result. So that's what it was about all the time. That's what Baskerville says, by the way, as well. That's what it was about. His analysis is the sexual revolution was weaponized to disable men. And you can see this all over the place. To criminalize men. You can see this all over the place. I know men in Ireland who did time in jail. One man in particular, Morris Lyons, spent a year and a day in jail because he refused to accept that the state had a right to dissolve his marriage, which he had entered into until death do them part. Put him in jail to shut him up. They had a habeas corpus, get this, a habeas corpus in camera. Habeas corpus. You are supposed to bring the prisoner before the people, not before your fellow lawyers, before the people. This is what I mean by corruption. And in the end, they let Morris Lyons out because they realized he wasn't going anywhere. He was going to shame the state, make them show themselves for what they were. So they came up with some spurious thing, maybe reason for letting him go, and let him go out the back door. I want to read, there is some hope, but it's qualified. And the hope is a man called, the cavalry, there's a one-man cavalry, and his name is Richard Humphreys. And he's a judge now. I knew him, I worked with him on the McChrystal case, famous case, which we took in the 2012 referendum on so-called children's rights, which is really transferring the rights of parents to the state. It wasn't nothing to do with children's rights. Have you seen a 2-year-old child falling around the carpet? Can you imagine them heading off to the Supreme Court to vindicate their rights? The rights are vested where they should be vested, which is with the parents. The state stole those from the parents and hold them down to themselves. And people were blackmailed and bullied into that by people who are being paid with your money and my money. And they, not only were they happy with that, but they actually had to corrupt the process by illegally using our money to spread their lies. And they got away with it. Because the judgment didn't come out 3 days before the referendum, and by then it was too late for the message to sink in with people. But still, in 3 weeks, from the 20th of October, when an opinion poll put us at 4%, to the 10th of November, we had 42%. We went in 3 weeks from 4% to 42%. That's another sign of hope. There's 42% of the people out there who are not fucking stupid. I want to read you from, because I don't want to overrun my time, but there's a couple of sections. This is really, it's an article I wrote about the judgment last year by Richard Humphreys. In a very unusual case, it was a the case of IRM and others versus the Minister for Justice and Equality and others. The worst Minister for Justice in the history of the state, Francis Fitzgerald. The most anti-father Minister for Justice in the history of the state, who introduced the Children and Family Relationships Bill, which created a new bar for fathers to jump in order to get recognised as fathers, single fathers. They had to have lived for 6 months or more with the mother of the child, including 3 months, for a year actually it was, including 3 months in the life of the child. How many 17-year-old, 18-year-old, 19-year-old boys do you know who are capable of meeting that requirement? And because they can't, they are permanently excluded from the lives of their own children. That's what it means. And judges are now using this mechanism as a default position. Instead of going into the facts of the case, they just simply ask one question. Did you, or did you not live? No. Fuck off. Not quite in so many words, but. So, this case was really unusual because it was an immigration case. And Judge Humphreys, amazing judge, amazing lawyer, he saw this man, an African man, who come here, and he actually had 2 children. One was another woman from, I think, Africa, and one with an Irish woman, who at the time of the application was pregnant with his child. And he made the application, they were trying to deport him, but he made the application on the basis that he was the father of it as an Irish citizen who would be born very soon. And that therefore he had rights under the Constitution, under Article 42A, the new 42A, that's the Children's Rights Record, and 14.3.3. And Judge Humphreys, I'll just summarise that. I won't go into the immigration aspect of it because he was highly critical of the Minister for Justice, so-called, and Equality, so-called, because he said she was fundamentally, implacably against the unborn child. In kind of application, submission she put to the court, it was clear. But she was equally, and he didn't say this, he was equally implacably opposed to fathers, which was obvious. And so Judge Humphreys built this construct where he outlined, he pulled out of the Constitution and elsewhere all these rights of the born child, including the right to be born, but also the right, when it was born, to have parents, to have his or her parents look after it, after her or him. And he went through that Article 4. I don't want to go into the 43.3, it's a different argument. But I want to come to where Judge Humphreys dealt with all this stuff that I've been talking about, the children referendum and the so-called marriage equality referendum. Because I have to say, you know, I was really taken aback when I saw it. And I rang Judge Humphreys and said, wow, this is amazing. I didn't think of this. But actually the reason I thought about it, I didn't think about it, was in fairness to myself, and one should always be fair to oneself, because nobody else is. The reason I didn't think of it, because actually there are probably no other judges like Judge Richard Humphreys. That's the sad news. But I want to tell you what he said. It's utterly incredible and amazing. And liberal. Liberal. Not right-wing, not reaction, liberal. He goes further than any liberal has ever gone, because he understands the meaning of the word. And none of these people do. Journalists, judges, lawyers, politicians, they don't understand the meaning of the word. I want to show you how. Because he was talking about the massive transformation that's happened in our perception of family rights, since it was all with every judgment in the Supreme Court for time immemorial, all through the years of independence up to very recently, was all based on the idea that there was only one kind of family, and that was the married nuclear family. And to some extent, single mothers were given unenumerated rights on the basis that they had given birth and so on. There was a natural aspect to that. But fathers were given no rights whatsoever, unenumerated or otherwise. And this is what, so then we go through all this thing, which, you know, as a father, and I'm sure some of you will have had the same thought. For 20 years, I had talked about this in 2015. 20 years. I've been spat upon by journalists, And politicians, by the way, David, I used to meet politicians too. I met dozens of them. They did nothing. I spoke at length to female politicians, a couple of them, who had problems with their own sons, their teenage sons. And they knew that I had an interest in this. And they came to me asking my advice. And I gave them my advice, even though they had never done anything. And then, never saw them again. So, this is what Humphreys says. And this is what I say about Humphreys, because I did explain it. And it's very complicated, but I've made it very simple, as I always do. Mr. Justice Humphreys drew attention to the massive transformation wrought in Irish law and the Constitution, both arising from our membership of the European Union and recent constitutional changes. I quote him here. Previous decisions on the lack of rights for the non-marital family are largely creatures of their time, he said. And society has transformed beyond all recognition since that chain of authority was put in motion. More fundamentally, the constitutional framework within which such decisions were generated has been subjected to massive transformation. Not only have we incorporated into our legislative culture, this is me now, multifarious alternative perspectives arising from our implementation of EU law, but the Children Amendment, as he had already demonstrated, tied us into guaranteeing the rights of all children, irrespective of the marital status of their parents. This willy-nilly meant that it was no longer appropriate for the state to divide and decide between categories of family on the basis of old prejudices. Similarly, the judge continued with the 34th Marriage Equality Amendment. He said, the 31st Amendment recognises the natural rights of all children, which in context must have particular reference to the enjoyment of those rights without regard to the marital status of their parents. See where he's going? He's basically saying, if you want to play the liberal, the progressive, you've got to bring the whole wagon with you. You can't leave people behind. If you go to the people and say, we're progressives now, we're not like those old guys with the white hair and the long coats. We still have the long coats and the wigs, white wigs. We're progressive now. Well, then you've got to be progressive. You can't bring in tyrannical instruments to deny further one category of family, alternative family, by giving rights to one that hadn't even been at the starting point, at the point when these people were raising their case. The 34th Amendment, he says, the 31st Amendment recognises the natural rights of all children, which in context must have particular reference to the enjoyment of those rights without regard to the marital status of their parents. The 34th Amendment, that's the Marriage Equality Amendment, has extended the availability of marriage to a range of same-sex relationships in contexts that would have been unthinkable when the Constitution was adopted. To regard this as a mere technical extension of the category of persons who may marry, rather than a quantum leap in the extent to which the Constitution is oriented towards respect and protection for a diversity of private family relationships, is to artificially separate literal wording from history, culture, and society. Any of these developments, and certainly all of them taken together, he says, as well as the fundamental shifts in society since the adoption of the Constitution, in my respectful view, respectful judge at the first, in my respectful view, warrant a recognition that members of non-marital relationships and non-marital parents of both sexes in particular enjoy acknowledgement of inherent constitutional rights in relation to their children and each other on a wider basis than has been recognised thus far. I say, it is a breathtaking pronouncement. Mr. Justice Humphreys built an edifice of logic that balanced the Children's Amendment on top of Article 40.3.3 to make visible the full rights of the unborn, and in the same way used the so-called Marriage Equality Amendment to lift natural parents, especially unmarried fathers, that's just a de facto fact of the matter, to a new and safer age, in effect extending certain categories of unmarried fathers the full benefits of natural rights and setting them alongside mothers as equals. In this he dealt with pretty much all the fear I had about last year's, that's 2015, amendment by drilling into its inner logic rather than focusing on its wording. I was wrong. If Richard Humphreys gets to win this argument, I was wrong. But bad news, the government have appealed this judgment. Huh? Progressives, eh? say. They've appealed to judgment using your money, my friends, your money, to make sure you don't get the benefit of Richard Humphrey's wisdom. Your money. Think about that the next time you fill in your tax return. I say, I fought the marriage equality referendum, I put that in quotes, with others on the grounds that the amendments stood to take things in the other direction, diluting further the rights of natural parents and normative but constitutionally unacknowledged family categories, such as my own. I fear that the influence in government and the judiciary of people like Francis Fitzgerald and Leo Varadkar might serve to treat the altered ecology of family rights to push fathers even further out of the picture, which is what's happened. Undoubtedly one of the objectives of recent legislation and constitutional amendments. But Judge Humphrey's radical rereading will, unless turned back in its tracks on appeal, this is before the appeal, and they did, almost certainly result in a totally unexpected windfall of unenumerated rights for fathers who manage to hang in with their children for an appreciable period of time. So, you would have a better chance of hearing that word cool than your child, or your daughter, or your son. That's when you won't. If Judge Humphreys was a Minister for Justice, or the Taoiseach. But since we have Francis Fitzgerald, and I'm not the Minister for Justice, I don't care at the moment. And I go on. It is as though on the cusp of this much vaunted new era, Judge Humphreys seeks to do his bit to establish at the very outset the widest possible framework of acknowledgement of unenumerated rights for unborn children and their parents, and born children and their parents, regardless of marital status, thus counterbalancing the current mentality affecting politics and the media, whereby only those categories of the human attracting right on kudos are worthy of support or protection. Humphreys J. reaches out to those who are truly marginalised, the child in the womb, the father in the dock, and draws them in, at the same time dominating the moral high ground by citing the logic and rhetoric of human rights and diverse families. If you pay lip service to new families, he seems to intimate, you can't be selective. In decency and integrity, you cannot extend rights beyond the normative without acknowledging the other shifts that have occurred in Irish society and making them morally coherent at the same time as you draw the margins inwards. Okay, if you want to read that article, and it is rather a good article, I have to say. Albert Kavanagh said, one should never be afraid to tell the truth even when it's fair in favour of oneself. I wrote it, but it's a good article. It's in Village Magazine, villagemagazine.ie, and the headline is Laws of Unintended Coherence. Get it?
What's the date, John?
It's back. It was sometime last year, I don't know. September 2006, but if you 2016. But if you put in my name and the laws of unintended coherence, the unintended coherence was these guys were tricking around at the behest of corporations in this new-founded corporatocracy, obeying the rule of our foreign paymasters. They have done something, according to Richard Humphreys and his enlightened vision of our Constitution and our laws, which they didn't intend to do. They've actually set the scene for rights for all categories of families, not just gay families. They cannot deny fathers. It is unconstitutional to deny fathers the same rights as gay fathers, straight fathers, the natural fathers of children. Which is now the unfortunate situation that the partner of a gay man who is himself the father of a child, but the partner is not, has no blood relationship, has a superior right to a father of a natural child. This is a frightening situation. This is an appalling situation. It is an obscene situation. It is why I objected to the amendment of 2015. And I predict, I'm very sorry to say, that this brief glint that has come out between those clouds we've seen, the glint of Richard Humphrey's eye, will not last long. Because courts are available for orders. I've seen it many times. There's a problem here for the state, which has a huge problem with democracy and people having rights to vote and speak. Oh God, help me, couldn't be having that, could you? And they have a real problem with the idea that fathers might be treated as human beings. Thank you.